Hi, I'm Traveling John, and I'm going to travel and sketch. Join me on the adventure. This is a continuation of our visit to Old Town Auburn, once the Chinatown of this area. We're standing in front of the Joss House here in Old Town Auburn, and I have been calling it the Chinese School, but actually it was a lot more than that. It was built in 1909, and it was a center of worship. It was a community fellowship, and also services like law services, because the people were new to the United States. They needed to understand the United States law, California laws, and all the other things that pertain to the community. So this was a place that was done, and actually this is one of the oldest buildings that still remain here. And as the Central Pacific Railroad was coming to this area, they enlisted a lot of Chinese people to help. And I'm going to take you to a part of Auburn very close to here. It's only about 4 blocks away, where they did an amazing feat that was known in far reaches. And I'd like to share that with you next as we go up into that area. So what I did is I just panned an area that's behind my wife, who's taking the picture right now, and it is of where the Central Pacific Railroad came up to just outside of Auburn. But at that point they had a problem, because they came up the Bloomer Ranch, and all of a sudden they hit this area that's a huge hill. But the hill is a very interesting combination of rock and clay. And the clay was so solid that it was like concrete. In fact, when the men tried to work in this area, they would break their spikes and shovels and all their equipment. And it felt like it was a useless task. They tried dynamite, they tried all sorts of different methodologies, but they had a huge challenge ahead of them. Well, at the same time, not only was there the challenge, there was the conflict with gold, people wanting to go see gold, but there was also silver that was just discovered up in Nevada. So they lost a lot of their laborers, and they turned to the Chinese to help. The Chinese came to the rescue, so to speak, and for one whole year, they chiseled patiently through this area, and it's called the Bloomer Cut, and it's very famous. In fact, at that time, with this huge project that was going across the United States, they considered this the 8th wonder of the world. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the camera from my wife and pan over so you can get a little bit of feeling of what this was like. But I'm also going to show you some old pictures of just after they had done the cut, and actually they say this has hardly changed at all. Even though it's clay and rock, it's pretty much like concrete, and it's just stayed the same ever since they cut through. So let me share that pan with you. So I'm reaching way over the side of the cliff with my arm to shoot this video. It's quite a drop. The video doesn't really show it as much as it feels when you're actually there. And then I shot another picture down below. I walked down by the tracks, and this is following the tracks looking up, actually looking east. And this is a photograph of the men actually working on it back in the 1800s. And another photograph looking down at a locomotive going through it, and here's a locomotive, steam locomotive, passing through the Bloomer Cut right after it was done. Here's men working on the railroad. They continued up into the Sierras on those granite cliffs, chipping away, being hanged by baskets, and very dangerous work. They made a record of setting 10 miles of track in one day. Very impressive. We're at the upper end of Auburn, and when I say upper, it's sort of up the hill from where I was before, and this is where that same train track came up to. And behind me, this is the train station that was built for downtown Auburn. This is a way from Old Town, because once they started building this, all the people wanted to leave Old Town and join a new neighborhood where all the commerce was going to be going on. All the businesses and all the big businesses wanted to be up in this area. Hotels were built, and even an opera house was built. But anyway, this is the old train station, and you can see some of the old train cars here. Of course, these are relatively new compared to the train cars they originally had. But you know, there's something else that's very special up here I'd like to show you. So we're going to cut the video for a moment and go to another part of this same spot. So that was the train station over there, and I wanted to show you this giant sculpture piece here in Auburn. And actually we have more than one, because this was done by one of our great local artists, and his name was Ken Fox. And he was not only an artist in sculpture, but he was also an artist in dentistry. So he made this sculpture, and it's a memorial to all those men, those that worked so hard on making the Transcontinental Railroad that runs right here through Auburn. As you can see, the Chinese have had a big influence on the city of Auburn and the state of California, building the Transcontinental Railroad. And they've had other influences with regards to the infrastructure of California. For example, down in the Bay Area, where I lived as a child in Castro Valley, there is a large lake called Lake Chabot. And from what I understand, the dam there that holds that lake was also built with the help of Chinese labor. Then a lot of the Chinese, after they went from the construction work, they also started wonderful big farms in California. So they've had a big influence all along. Now, with regards to the Joss House, for those of you that are interested in visiting the Joss House, it is a museum today. You can see and hear the history of that place. They have special hours that you can visit. And I would suggest you go to Google and look up the Joss House Museum in Auburn, California, and there you'll probably find the hours. And this photograph was taken during one of their celebrations of Chinese New Year's in front of the Joss House in Auburn. Now, this is the second half of this Old Town Auburn program. And the first half, as you probably hopefully seen, had to do with my black and white sketch. And this is a finished black and white sketch I did across the street from the Joss House or Chinese school. And what I'm going to do next in this program, or this half of this vlog, is to do the color for this black and white sketch. I've scanned the sketch, I've incorporated it into the computer. I've also done a watercolor that I'd like to incorporate with this sketch. So I'm putting them both together, and I'm going to be doing it in a program called Photoshop on my computer, and that's the next step of this video, and I hope you join me in that process. This is the black and white sketch on my computer screen. I've scanned it, and that's the watercolor that I've also scanned, and it's behind the black and white sketch. So this is the process I'm going to be going through to finish this illustration. Now, what I've done is I've chosen the brickwork on the building at the top of the hill in this illustration, getting the right color brick that I want, and I'm going to change the color of that watercolor behind it with an overlay. So I've created an overlay for that. I'm going to fill it with this color. So now it's solid color, the color I want, or close to it. Now I'm playing with filters on that layer so that it becomes more or less transparent where the white is and disappears. And that's a colored layer, a color filter, excuse me. I'm fooling around with hue and saturation a little bit to get exactly what I'm hoping for. More saturation, a little darker, lighter. Okay. Now the next thing that I want to do is work with the awnings and also the top trim. The trim on this building is basically gray and black on the front. On the sides it's not. So I'm getting a gray effect, and again I'm working on that watercolor layer. I'm affecting the colors on the watercolor. And I've chosen the path and I've made the effect I want. Now there's the signage for the Poor Choice and the Mandarin restaurant next door that I want to lighten up, get it more white. So I made a selected area for not only those signs, but also the street, the sidewalks, and the concrete wall next to the car or truck. So first I'm going to again work with the hue and saturation, take some of the color out, purple color out. Now what I want to do is I want to make the top of the lamppost. I'm taking the magic wand and I'm deselecting some of the area that's selected with that path. So I'm using the magic wand to take off that wall, sidewalk, etc. I've gone around it and watched the ants all of a sudden disappear, and they're still on the signage, the lanterns, and the light at the top of the lamppost. And now I'm going to lighten those up even more. Take more color out and lighten them up. Okay. I'm going to paint those Chinese lanterns red. It's too dark. I want to make it lighter, so I'm going to have to choose a different red. Go back to my color palette and choose a lighter red. And try coloring them in again. That's better. I got the fire hydrant. I want to paint red too, of course. Now there's the brick building there, second one down from the first brick building. I'm going to change the color on that. So I got a path and also a layer that I'm going to fill with color. There's a path. I'm going to make the selection and fill that with color. And again, I'm going to change the effects of the color, similar to what I did on the first building, but each building was built at a different time and the bricks look a little different. This one's an older building, so different bricks. The awnings, too purple. So I want to get more red in the awnings of that same building. And in this case, I'm just working with the watercolor on the base layer. And I'm going to use hue and saturation again to adjust that. Get more red in there. Make it darker. Next building down. Oh, the trim at the top. I didn't make that lighter. Now, I got the next building down to do the same type of thing with. This one was a darker brick color. Same methodology. I also wanted to take the color out of the roof above. because that's they were very light. Steel roofs. I changed the last building to green using pretty much the same methodology, and I also changed the color of the roof. That building was not brick, that's wood siding. Now I'm giving a little bit, I have a layer chosen, and I want to shade the sides of those buildings more to emphasize the little alleyways that go between the brick buildings. The cars, the vehicles, excuse me, I had to get the color out of those because I don't want them to stand out as much as they were. Not putting color in the rear windows or any of that kind of, red tail lights. Now I'm working with the plants that are hanging over the side of that wall. I want to give them a green color, so down on the watercolor layer, I'm again using hue and saturation to take the color into a green tone instead of the purple that it was. I've also changed the color of the shirt on the musician and his hat too. The middle ground, those trees and plants need to be, I want to put a nice green behind those. So I'm using the brush tool and I'm using different greens to tint that lighter and give it more of a green effect instead of blue. So you'll see me dabbling with different greens, lighter and darker, to get the effect I want. Now I wanted to lighten up the whole background outside of the brick, so I did that. I'm going to do something a little different. I'm selecting just a portion of the black line that's in the distance, and you'll see as I switch layers what I'm doing. See, I took just the courthouse, the redwood trees, and I'm going to be working with those separate from the rest of the ink line. So I've selected it. I'm going to turn off the selection tool so you can, I'm going to not view that so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to take a big brush tool. I'm going to move into a dark forest green to tint those redwood trees instead of solid black into more of a appropriate green for the distance they are. See, I just touched them up a little bit so that when the black ink like in the foreground is separated from that. Now I'm going to be doing the walls of the courthouse itself on a separate layer. Give them a good appropriate yellow for that the walls of that yellow brick walls. It's interesting, and I'm going to be doing little different layers and different colors for this courthouse and museum of Placer County. It's interesting that back in the 60s they were thinking, from what I understand, about tearing this building down. And there was so much of a protest. They decided not to. It was more expensive to keep it than build a brand new building. But so many people love that building, and a lot of people volunteered time and effort and money to fix it up to its good condition as it is today. So we're happy that happened. It's interesting because they needed more space for county buildings. They did build another facility nearby, and in that case they used a geodesic dome, which was modern, especially in the 60s. So that's what they did for that other municipal building. I'm going to be putting the green in for the dome and the roof and all that. I'm going to get it closer so you can see what I'm doing. Sometimes I use a path tool to get a nice edge to what I'm working on, but if it's small like this, just a dome, I'll just use a paintbrush and just make a layer and get the color I want in there. Get the color green. It's from what I understand, it's a copper roof, but with time and age, it's mellowed in color. So I gotta get that paintbrush in there. I gotta get the right size tool. I don't want it too big of a brush. Going to get in the roof soon. Get the right color for that. Ooh, I got to do the pillar. I got to do some highlights first. If you have a chance to visit Old Town Auburn, they have a great museum in the lower layer of this courthouse, and also they give tours, historical tours of Old Town Auburn that meet on Saturday mornings near the front of the courthouse. Terrific tour to take and learn some of the history of this area. This work that I'm doing this time primarily is the, I would say, the south part of Old Town Auburn. Hopefully I'll be able to do another vlog, and that will include the courthouse and more of the, say, the northern part of Old Town. A lot of interesting parts there that I'm not talking about in this vlog. So I got a layer behind the black, then I'm putting in little detail colors, some of the ornamentation on the roof. I can do the detail behind the line work and it pops out because of the black line that's above it, the next layer. Now I want to highlight some more of the pillars that come down the front of the courthouse. So that's pretty much the end of what I'm going to be showing in my application of color to this ink line sketch, and you'll see the final results when I show you the printout. So that finishes up the color version of the sketch I did of the southern portion of Old Town Auburn. And I hope you enjoyed that work I did, and I want to show you the finished sketch I did of that area of Old Town Auburn. Here you can see again the courthouse, the brick buildings, and of course I enjoyed doing this. I can't wait to do the northern part of Old Town Auburn, where there is more very interesting architectural features, and so that will come in the future someday, I hope. Anyway, if you're interested in getting one of these color printouts on archival paper, or the black and white sketch I did on archival paper, or as I've mentioned before, the original ink line sketch on canvas, please go to Etsy.com and look for my store there. And of course, I would invite you again to visit my website and learn a little bit more about me at www.TravelnSketch.com. So, thanks again for joining me on this adventure, and have a great day.